Hey guys, welcome back to the final part of Croc. Now we're going to finish off these interviews and then the rest of the Crocipedia.
So my name is Jack Yarwood and I'm a staff writer at Time Extension, which is a retro-focused gaming publication. I became aware of Croc quite early in my my gaming kind of life. Like I did grow up with a Super Nintendo and a Genesis, but when I guess I got a PlayStation, I was always on the lookout for that kind of next step of you know, like what would be like the next kind of platformer that I would fall in love with, and Croc was one of those kind of titles that I fell in love with kind of early on in owning a PlayStation, because it was kind of that evolution of things, you know, like Mario and Sonic, but in 3D. Yeah, I feel like Croc was an interesting part, like an interesting moment in 3D gaming, because I guess N64 had Super Mario 64, and Sony had obviously had Crash Bandicoot by the point that Croc had come out. But things like Spyro hadn't come out yet, and there was still that feeling that every team that was working in 3D in gaming sort of had to do it and figure things out by themselves. It wasn't like people, I guess, looking at previous examples of 3D in games and like how they would handle specific scenarios. So you get all these interesting kind of idiosyncrasies between different projects and different 3D platformers from that point. So like with Croc, like the movement is like it's like driving a vehicle. Like you can go backwards and like things like that you don't see in other 3D platformers at the time. Like, you know, a lot of the way that's handled in other games is that, you know, if you want to, you know, go back on yourself in a 3D space, you have to kind of move it like an analog stick, or you know, move the directional buttons to go in a full circle. Whereas like with Croc, you know, you can reverse kind of like a truck. It's like all these interesting things that kind of happened through kind of the experimentation of kind of through developers having to kind of work things out by themselves, which is something that you don't really you don't really get now nowadays, because it's sort of like it is set in stone, kind of these tenets. And I feel like Croc's position in the gaming industry is kind of being one of those pioneers that kind of had to figure out these issues and kind of overcome them. I feel like the character design of Croc was definitely one of the more kind of special elements about it, because I guess there's that whole history there that people kind of allude to with like Argonaut as a company had obviously been quite heavily involved with Nintendo, and like the origins of this project, whenever people talk about it, it's always in sort of in relation to kind of that Miyamoto connection, and kind of showing it to Miyamoto passing on it, and then obviously Fox Interactive getting involved with publishing. And I feel like the character, um, what could have happened then, you know, with having to replace, like, you know, in the early drafts, like they mentioned kind of using Nintendo characters to then go to like an original character. It kind of lives and dies on whether that character is charming, and whether, you know, it's like a character that can carry kind of a mascot platformer. And I feel like Croc definitely does in multiple ways. Like just the design, like, you know, it's a very simple design. You know, it's just kind of like a you know, a big-eyed crocodile, but then adding like a backpack on, and like um just the way that, you know, it's animated and the way that the character runs, so you have this kind of elongated kind of like at an angle kind of run, which is it's kind of, it all kind of lends this sense of, you know, this character's on an adventure. And it's something that's like really kind of, I guess when I was younger, it's sort of like endeared me to it, because it felt like, you know, this big kind of adventure, and this character's kind of going on it. And yeah, well, I think the really interesting thing about Croc is that they did have that relationship with Nintendo, and like they kind of came away from it, and they decided obviously to make this game that was kind of more family friendly kind of platformer. And if you look at kind of how Crash Bandicoot and games like that were kind of advertised, it was kind of like on the edgier side of like the platformer, and I feel like kind of they were kind of the counterpart to something like Rare on like Nintendo hardware, doing kind of Banjo-Kazooie and kind of those kind of games that were kind of like all age games. Croc was definitely, yeah, Croc kind of feels like a Nintendo game on a PlayStation system, and obviously, you know, ported to other devices. But I think that's what's so kind of special about it. It has those kind of sensibilities. And I mean, there is something that's worth talking about in terms of like level design, because one of the big things about, you know, 3D, moving into 3D wasn't just like, you know, how do we move a character around a 3D space? It was like, how do we create these 3D spaces so they don't just look like a bunch of corridors? And I think like that's something, when you look back at Croc, you can kind of see the battle that's going on with the designers in terms of like, how do we make these feel like vast worlds and not just kind of these like interlinked kind of corridors that people go down. And I feel like a lot of that is just down to like the creativity of the team that made it, in terms of, you know, like the kind of the obstacles that they came up with, the move set for Croc. Like I think at the time, like it was very rare for, you know, characters to have like a ledge grab and things like that in a 3D platformer, and you know, just the fact, you know, Croc can like swim and like have this kind of all these different moves, and it's like it's kind of a testament to that ambition and kind of a meeting of that kind of technology, but also that kind of, you know, clever design sensibility to create this kind of this toolkit for players to kind of mess around with in this space. It was interesting looking at kind of Fox Interactive at the time, because so many of the properties that Fox were doing were licensed. You know, it was like related to The Simpsons, or, you know, Alien, or things like that. And like what was interesting kind of looking at press releases and things for Croc was, you know, this idea that there might even be a Croc TV show. And, you know, it was kind of like it seemed like a really kind of big investment on Fox's part to kind of pick it up and kind of run with it. And there were these plans to kind of make it, you know, really launch it as a character. And even though there were kind of many games that followed kind of the original Croc, like, you know, both like a kind of like a sequel from the original team and like spin-offs from other studios, it's like really interesting to kind of see that kind of initiative happened, because I feel like the common sense approach would be to do what all kind of big publishers do and just be like, we're focusing on what's, you know, popular and what's already tested, what's tried and true. And I feel like, you know, a lot of this story about kind of the making of Croc is going to be about kind of Argonaut and how they are kind of these technical wizards and kind of, you know, design geniuses. But like I also feel like there is some credit, I guess, for Fox as well for kind of, you know, pursuing this when it kind of stands out from the rest of the catalog. The music in Croc, yeah, definitely is just it's like incredibly atmospheric. It's like the type of music that you kind of want from like a 3D platformer that isn't like in your face, but it's very much, it kind of gradually kind of leads you into the world. It's something like the soundtrack is one of those soundtracks that I come back to, like in terms of, you know, like playlists on YouTube and like things like that, because it is just yeah, it's just one of those ones that has kind of a, I guess, both like a nostalgic place in my heart, and that's something like when I was, you know, there is that kind of you know, I encountered it at a certain age, so it's kind of stuck in my brain. But then on the other end, like, you know, as I've got older and as I've, you know, spoken to more musicians in the games industry, it's just like my appreciation of it has got even greater, because I can sort of see the effort that goes into stuff like that. Yeah, I do think like the music does a great job in sort of leading, I guess, lending to that kind of adventure thing, where it is basically like Croc is, you know, kind of going out into the world and having this big adventure. And I feel like the music does a lot to kind of, yeah, give people that kind of sense of kind of a world, and you know, these aren't just kind of corridors, you know, like that people are going down, but like a connected world with like these different kind of climates and kind of like yeah, and things to kind of discover and secrets to find. Time extension, we do cover kind of everything, you know, that happens in the retro space in terms of remasters and remakes and things like that, because they're just becoming more common. I think people have realized that there's kind of not just kind of a commercial incentive in terms of bringing these things back, but there's also kind of that preservation aspect as well, in terms of, you know, making games from the past available again. So we do cover a lot of remasters, remakes, you know, reissues, and please don't ask me to describe the differences between those, because it's kind of ever shifting. When I heard that you know, Croc was kind of a candidate for kind of being remade or remastered, it kind of made complete sense to me, because it's a game that I feel like a lot of people have a fondness for and would, you know, buy again on that kind of just on that fact. But I feel like it's also because of the point in time in which it came out, it makes complete sense that, you know, for someone to revisit it and kind of sand off those hard edges and, you know, like kind of basically do the things that have since become conventions that, you know, the Croc team wouldn't have known about at the time. You know, they were kind of working in the dark, I guess, like when it comes to stuff. So I feel like, you know, I was extremely excited to hear it, that Croc, you know, might be coming back, because, you know, or is coming back, because yeah, it is like it's like a prime candidate for it. And I feel like there's a lot of lesser candidates that have already come back, that it feels like it makes sense for Croc to definitely, yeah. I feel like one of the interesting things about like re-releasing Croc and kind of like revisiting it in a way that, you know, people can switch between kind of old and new in a way, like it's a good kind of opportunity for people to, you know, who may have heard about this game over the years. People now kind of being presented with it, people can go back now who haven't played it and, you know, experience that and get an idea of kind of those, you know, what it was like for people back then to play it, but at the same time, you know, benefit from, you know, the hindsight of, you know, this is kind of, Croc was made at a very kind of experimental time for kind of 3D games.
Okay. Now the next one. Titanium Studios was one of the companies that made the remake. There were two companies that developed it together. Oh, they're an Australian company? Oh, that's cool.
So I heard about Croc a couple of years ago, heard that it might be available for a remaster. And the issue at the time was that nobody had source code available. So I did a little hunt around the internet and found out about this Croc Definitive Edition that someone had released anonymously, and did a little bit of digging and was able to find them. And it turns out they had found source code some years earlier on the internet, and we were able to get hold of that and do some experiments and sort of confirm that we could be able to make a remaster. My role here has been sort of the project lead here at Titanium Studios, and so I'm also the managing director, so I run the team, and but also my background's technical, so I do some of the engineering, but we have some really good engineers on the team here.
I'm a lead engineer here at Titanium. I've come onto the Croc project to help with all sorts of things, really. But a lot of the kind of user experience side of things, making the controls feel a little bit more modern, getting some more kind of fluid camera control in there as well. And also helping with some of the graphics, because we wanted to make it look a little shiny and new. I think when we get the source code, the first thing we try and do is figure out what's needed to be able to compile it again. How do we actually get this thing running in some form, maybe even without graphics, just to see if we can run it.
I mean, I think also the first thing I do is try and see if we can figure out if it's all there or if there's enough of it there. We don't necessarily need all of the code. We don't need the code for the original platforms necessarily, but we certainly need, you know, the gameplay code and the things that make Croc Croc. Yeah, a lot of the game logic, like the gameplay, is written in a language called, well, I've forgotten it, Argonaut scripting language, I think it is. And yes, it's a very customized system. And the tools for those are all lost, actually. So we have to sort of do some reverse engineering and sort of convert the binaries for that back into some kind of usable source code in order to be able to modify them. So while we did find source code, it was just to the sort of the final shipping game. So all of the custom tools that Argonaut had built back in the day, we don't have any of those. And we don't have any of the original data, or very little of it. And we don't have any of the original Argonaut scripting language scripts. So
part of the work we've done in like modernizing the controls, for example, means we've made some changes to how, you know, the characters might move between different states, and any kind of special input handling we might need to do in some of those transitions. And although we've got source code, we've also got a significant portion which is compiled code that we don't tend to go into and mess with if we can help it. So we've kind of got like an extra layer on top where we can hook into certain things, like, for example, detecting when a different animation plays, and then we can figure out, okay, well, what character is that playing on, and then hook into that as a kind of like workaround for being able to insert some of our own code to kind of hijack what the original was doing and smooth things out a little. So the original game had these tank controls, right, where you had the original PlayStation controller. It didn't even come with joysticks originally. So you just had the D-pad, you just had digital inputs. And the way that they implemented that was that you would press up on the D-pad and Croc would move in whatever direction he was facing. Left and right, he would rotate left or right. And so, yeah, we call it tank controls because he kind of moved like a tank. We didn't want to completely remove that for people who have nostalgia for it, right? It's not a common approach to controls these days, but there are speedrunners who have mastered it. There are all of these players who have these memories of it. So we wanted to preserve it whilst also offering a more modern approach alongside it. And the way in which we've handled that is essentially kept the tank controls as they were, basically, on the D-pad. Meanwhile, if you want to get the more kind of modern, typical platformer control experience, you've got the joystick. And so at any point in time, you can just freely swap between them. The camera behavior will also swap. So if you start using the D-pad, the camera will fall in behind Croc and follow him around closer to how it originally behaved. Whereas if you're using the joystick, you can use the right stick as well to swing the camera around freely and have full control like you would expect from a more modern game.
everyone has a certain expectation of how a 3D platformer plays now, and you know, those controls at the time, which were quite innovative, but again, the original controller didn't have analog controls, and nobody knew how a 3D platformer was supposed to work back then. But you know, we're 20 plus years later now, and everyone has certain expectations. But certainly when the analog controls were first done, you pick up the controller and it was just immediately intuitive to play and 5 times more enjoyable. So I think everyone that remembers the game is going to love having these new controls. one of the other things about Croc is it has an enormous amount of content. There's hundreds of level maps in there and thousands of textures and I think a couple of hundred models or something as well. And so the combination of sort of this volume of content and the way it was made was going to make sort of the traditional approach of having artists hand upscale and improve the quality of these assets wasn't going to work, because it was going to be too much burden on the artist to fix all of these issues. And so what we ended up coming up with was a couple of pieces of technology where it's all done, by automated pipelines, but those pipelines are sort of configured and guided by artists. One of the interesting challenges on this Croc remaster has been the way the original 3D game content was created, because it was created for consoles that didn't have particularly accurate rendering. And so things like worrying about, cracks between parts of the objects, or the textures filtering smoothly, those things don't really apply to those consoles because they couldn't do any of that anyway. And if we just stick that content straight on a modern console, you find that sort of you get parts of the model that look clean, and then you get parts that look really, unpleasant with big cracks in them and unpleasant seams and what have you. So we have these, these up-resed smooth models in the game now, which came out quite good. And those are all done by a proprietary system we have here at Titanium. And then the settings for those per model or per character, per level map, etc., are set by an artist. And then the second part we have is also with the textures, and that one in particular required a lot of work to stitch all the seams back together and then upscale them in a way that had very clean seams. And so we've ended up with quite a good improvement in the visual quality and fixed a lot of, what at the time weren't issues, but are certainly issues now. And been able to do that in a way where, it wasn't 50 years of art time or anything like that on it. So, yeah. I think we do have our rendering looking more similar to the pre-rendered marketing images, and in fact a lot of the subdivision surfaces that were probably used on the pre-renders on the poster behind are indeed used as part of our smoothing technology. So with the music, we ended up having to source the tracks from several different places, and so in some cases the only complete source was the PlayStation version. And those are at quite high quality, so that works out well anyway. On on a couple of tracks, the PC version had complete full-length tracks that were full quality. But one of the issues with the PC version tracks is that while they were CD audio quality, in order to fit them on the CD or on the original disc, they were actually shortened. And so for the shortened ones, we didn't use those. And then quite late in development, one of the original people involved with the development, Croc, found a box of memorabilia that they had, and one of them was an audio CD that someone had put together, and they had just assembled like a good portion of the tracks, not all of them, but a decent number of the tracks at CD audio quality. And so where we had them, we used those. And in fact, that CD and another earlier, I don't know what to call it, beta, but a much earlier version of the music is available in the in our museum content section of the game. I think if we're thinking about some unexpected issues that came up, the one thing that surprised me repeatedly was, I guess, the amount of content or the amount of effort that was put into the original game. And so I was sort of constantly surprised by the volume of how many models were created, how many maps were created, actually how much music there was, and that goes across the board in the scripting language scripts, for the character AI. The game was very sophisticated, I think, for the time, and probably had a lot to do with why it was so popular. I have this picture in my head that an old game from '97 is going to be quite simple and done by a small team, and I wouldn't say that was the case with Croc. I think the original team did an amazing job of just creating a very full and complete game that, again, quite surprisingly stands up very well compared to modern titles. So my belief is that the original developers will be quite pleased with what we've got, and because yes, we've put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that the original character and feeling of the game is preserved, and the original look, and we have also put in the extra modes so that we can players can adjust the graphic settings to make the game look more consistent with the original if they prefer the original look of the game. I think we've been very fortunate that this game is close to Jez Sand's heart, and he has given us the green light to do a really high quality remaster on it. And so I know I'm very happy that we've been able to really do our best effort on this one and polish the game and make it look as good as we know how to do. And I think everyone that's a fan of the original game is going to be able to see that and appreciate it.
Well, that's pretty cool that they found source code from some guy that made a fan remake. So I'm not gonna have a look for the Croc Definitive Edition, see what it is. It's like I like those companies that allow fan games. They're like really cool. I hate the ones that just threaten to sue. So they're not trying to rip it off or anything. Just I don't like those type of companies. She's an artist for the remake. Oh, that's cool.
I'm Naomi Hermans, and my involvement with Croc was to be one of the game artists, and I've had the amazing opportunity to be on the team to bring back and revisit this cultural icon from 1997. When I started, I looked into it further, of course, starting to work on it and be a bit more included in the culture. I found out more about 3D platformers from the late 90s and early 90s, and the fact that Croc was pretty much the first 3D platformer of its time is incredible. It is so amazing. Yeah, well, back in the 90s, we didn't really have the technology or the means to support a lot of polygons and make a rounded surface. So back then you really had to make do with what you were given, and that was not very much. In modern times, technology has advanced rapidly, and we're now able to support more of an art feel that is more aligned with the original creative direction that the team wanted, which is really great to be able to put into life. As an artist, while helping to develop the direction for Croc's meshes, particularly the characters and how they look when they've been up-resed, I think I most enjoyed my part to play in experimenting with these incredible sliders that the developers and engineers had put so much time and effort into, and now I can just mess with it and just push the limits of how smooth I want the character to look, or how polygonal I want it to be as it originally was, or maybe a mixture of both. Right now, looking at a lot of 3D platformers these days in modern times, stylized 3D works, like the general Nintendo ones like Mario or Kirby and things, they do have a kind of they do have like a mix of soft and harder edges. Never fully hard, because a completely hard angled surface, a corner like that, doesn't exist in the real world. So we don't want to get too close to something unreal. Having beveled edges or leaning towards bringing back some of the original polygonal aspects that make for a unique kind of proportioned mesh, especially around the snout, I found was very important to have that iconic look of Croc, especially when we're coming from the more isometric-ish view that you get from above. The Gobbos were very, very different. At the time, in the original game, they were a single polygonal plane, just a little plane with a circular kind of texture, a paint chip really these days. It was tiny. I think I'm not sure how many pixels wide it was. It was something like less than 60 by 60, and it's incredible the amount of detail that you can get out of that, or just the impression that you can get from such a small texture. But yes, now we've had to change that up, and I actually hand painted the Gobbos texture, and we didn't AI up-res that because I felt, and Jason felt, that it was so iconic, and the up-resing models that we found online or we were licensing weren't adequate to be able to produce the amount of detail or the mind's impression of fur that you would get from that tiny Gobbos texture. The amount that was packed in this game is incredible. We had a system where we were able to see every single mesh in the entire game in one scene, and it would fill up my screen. It was incredible just to see how much work had been put into every single asset, whether that's a little fireball that's coming out of the lava or one of the platforms. And there are a lot of different platforms and a different texture for every platform, and every platform has its own code and own environment that it has to be placed in. And then alongside that are all the characters, all the rest of the environmental meshes, and you have quite an in-depth game. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me to be able to work on something like this, bringing a retro game back into the modern visual hemisphere is something I'll never be able to do again. These things are limited, those retro games, and I think it's gonna be one of the highlights of my career as a video game artist to be able to work on this. When the old gamer starts to play this revisit to Croc, I think that, well, what we hope for is for a sense of nostalgia to be triggered and for the original game to feel the same, but the visuals to be closer to what the player may have thought it looked like or imagined it looked like after years and years of dreamlike nostalgia. And that's what we hope for. As a new gamer coming into this Croc remaster, they will likely realize that it is a remaster of an older game, just mainly due to making the comparison between what is currently on the market. When you have a remaster of Croc up against things like Baldur's Gate or Counter-Strike 2, the difference in game mechanics and the requirements from game developers are very different in these modern times. So I'm sure that new gamers coming to this Croc remaster would be able to tell the difference. However, there is a certain magic about Croc. The simplicity of just having a platformer where you're controlling this character and exploring the world and going through and finding this story and finding the puzzle pieces and unlocking all the little mysteries. There's a certain charm to that I think some games may have lost these days in becoming too complicated.
Oh, the last one. Oh, this is the developer who did the Croc Definitive Edition that they were talking about. Oh, this is cool.
So my name is Zane Van Yperen. I am basically just someone who loved Croc as a kid. I was born in '94. Croc was released in '97. And I was a bit of a computer addict. I loved it. And Croc was the game I played. Despite all of that, I actually suck at the game. I'm horrendous at it. I can run through the forest island easily enough, almost as good as the speedrunners. But after that, and especially once you hit the desert levels, I just drop off a cliff. I'm horrendous. The way this all started was, so there's a bit of history here. Basically, for context, the original PC version of Croc, in order to hear the music, you had to have the CD in the disk drive. So that was my first foray into modding Croc. I wrote what's called the horrendously named Croc PC Music Enabler, which does exactly what it says on the tin. Maybe a couple months later, I discovered people were actually using this, so I got in contact. And that's how I ended up running and managing the old Croc forums. Now, what I say next is purely hearsay, but one of these members was given the source code by an original Argonaut developer. I do not know who, however I do have my suspicions. Well, it's probably alright for me to say this, but I reckon it was Matt Godbolt. Because as you know, I worked for a bit at Titanium Studios, the studio doing the remaster. Yeah. And as part of this, people were going around contacting all the old developers and getting as much as they had. Just because a lot of this content was lost to time. And one of the archives we got was a dump of the source. Now, looking at it, because it was given to me, obviously, because I knew how to deal with it the best, and one of the subfolders of this archive matched exactly the leak I received all those years ago. Like, all the file timestamps were the same, all the contents was the same. And the person who provided that archive was Matt Godbolt. I believe that when it was leaked, if it wasn't him, it was someone he gave it to, and they copied and zipped up that subfolder of it. And eventually, that code made its way to me. And as you can imagine, being someone who loves Croc, I was ecstatic. And I was a developer too. So this was like a dream come true, almost. Yeah. Unfortunately, the code was an absolute mess and in no way usable. Couldn't build it, let alone play it. Keep in mind, at this point, I was like a young kid in a candy store. So the first thing I did was open it, look at it, and try to get it building, and failed miserably. And I tried for weeks to get the damn thing building, and it just wouldn't. Now, granted, I was a lot younger then. I didn't know as much as I do now. But eventually, over the course of a couple of months, I got it working. It was messy. It was slow, but it was working. Now, just for context, this was around 2014 I got it working. I got the code a couple of years prior, 2011, 2012, I think. But yeah, it's probably worth mentioning that parallel to this, to attempting to get the original game working, I was also tinkering with the Unity game engine, and I'd written importers for all the various Croc assets, and I was hoping that it might be easier to recreate the game logic from the original assets than get the game itself working, and that ended up not being the case. So remember the Argonaut scripting language? I was actually re-implementing, the interpreter from C, which is what the code is written in, into C# for Unity. So the Unity port would have been able to run all the original scripts which controlled Croc's movement and everything else. So all of that would have been probably not identical, but pretty close. It worked, kind of. I remember I had the first level, and so the adventure begins, importing. I could see the map. I couldn't see any of the enemies. I could see the waypoints of where the little bee guy that flies around. I could see where he was meant to go. And when I ran it, I could see the little platform wobbling up and down, which was controlled by a script. So I got that far, and then I realized the sheer amount of work it would take to do this just was not worth it. So I decided to abandon that and go back to getting the original game working. Well, I was working on both of these things in parallel. When I got sick of one and burned myself out on one, I'd move on to the other, and so on and so on. But working on the Unity port definitely gave me a lot of experience just with the code, with the strategy interpreter, and when I had the little platform wobbling up and down, I saw the amount of effort it took for me to get to that is like, that's all that is literally doing is taking the Y position of the platform and bobbing it up and down a bit. There's, yeah, literally that. There is so much more to do. That was one of the simplest parts in the code. And this, it's not like it's a CPU or a virtual machine that has a specification. All I had was the implementation itself. All I had was the huge mess of switch statements, the big case statement to go off. And yeah, at that point, I realized this isn't feasible, unfortunately. Croc, for me, at least back then, was almost like an addiction. I had to have my fix. There would be months where I would do absolutely nothing but Croc, and then months where I wouldn't touch it at all. Now, I was at university at the time, so take that as you will. This challenge had defeated me, and I wouldn't let it defeat me again. I guess I always wanted, in the back of my mind, to release it, to do the mini remaster, release it, not only so Croc could live again, but it's a rather impressive project. I would like to have that to my name. So pride was a small part of it. But of course, due to the clandestine nature of it, until now that really wasn't feasible at all. I was young and extremely paranoid. As far as I knew, Jez was the one who owned the rights to Croc, and all I had was second-hand knowledge from what some of the others had told me, and they said he was made out to be this kind of evil demon creature that would sue anyone who just thought of doing something with Croc. Now granted, I didn't have much, because I was young and stupid, but all it takes is someone like that not liking you, and they can make your life a living hell. So I tried to keep this underground as much as I could. So enter 2017. At this point, Croc was released in 97, I believe. This is when Definitive Edition, well, what is known as Definitive Edition, was actually born, when the idea was solidified. I wanted to release this as a so-called 20th anniversary edition, which is what Definitive Edition was called originally. However, one of the YouTubers that I sent it to for reviewing didn't like that and called it Definitive Edition, and it kind of stuck. The reaction was not what I was hoping. So most of the people I'd spoken to, most people I'd released it to, were speedrunners, because that was, at that point, that was the most active Croc community. And speedrunners, if you've dealt with them before, let's just say they can be very opinionated and critical. I knew from the get-go this would be a pretty thankless task. I didn't realize just how much, and that point just kind of soured me on Croc communities at all. You could technically call it a remaster, but the whole goal of the Definitive Edition was to keep the game as original as possible while being able to run on modern systems without all the screwing around that you had to do before. You could just click on it and it would open, correct volume levels, correct screen resolution, and it would just work. That's huge, because Croc has been notoriously difficult to run on anything above Windows 98. Every now and then I did, and I still do, actually get emails from random people across the globe saying, "I like what you've done, thank you, you helped me relive my childhood," that kind of thing. And it's not much, but it does actually mean quite a lot. So if you're watching this, thank you. There were 1 or 2 news articles about it over the years, a couple of YouTube videos, and I knew it wasn't big, but it was enough. The work I'd done was being noticed and being used, and I was content. This was all under an alias, and I was really strict about keeping my main online identity and the Croc identity separate. Of course, there are a couple of screw-ups there that nearly busted me, but by and large, I think I managed to stay anonymous pretty well. Well, the people who played it as a nostalgic thing, they tend to be more, at least I found, more motivated, more tech-savvy. So if something was wrong in the game, they were able to, if not like tweak a config option to fix it themselves, they'd be able to email me with a bug report of what exactly was wrong and where to do it, which I really actually appreciated, because it's an issue and I could fix it, and often did for the next release. I've done my piece, my work is finished. Like, so long, and thanks for all the fish.
Okay, all the interviews are done. We can go to the game design section. Croc's evolution from concept to popular icon. Oh, cool. Oh, full screen. It's really cool they digitize these. Pretty good quality. Big nose. Oh, I don't remember this boss. Must have gotten either forgetting it or it got removed. Okay, I definitely don't think he was in the game. The hell is that thing? Oh, this looks like a comic book. Looks really cool. Jeez, there's a lot of concept art. Oh my... Oh god, I'm dumb. Alright, I'll just quickly go back through real quick and you can just pause the video to read the descriptions. Oh my god, I'm dumb. I didn't even realize there was writing underneath the concept art. Yeah, potential bosses. They were, yeah. Still been removed. Yeah, unused enemy. I was right, they weren't in the game. Here we go. Alright, now character sheets. Chumley the Rocket Man. Grimly. Ah, these guys. Whoops. I don't remember this enemy. Well, character designs. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. That's what they were originally going to make him. Do different designs, trying to figure out what animal they wanted to use. Character animations. The hell is this? Oh, alternative version of Croc character. It's gonna be a, is that like a cat or something? Alternative versions. It was originally gonna be like a mouse. Some weird thing with a big nose. Game design document. Developer test levels. I would love to have this. Oh, that's cool. An old loading screen. Not loading screen, main menu. Oh, they were originally gonna have a continue screen when you lose all your lives. It's nearly an hour. My god, there's so much extra content. My god. Nearly 5 hours worth. Or 4 hours. Looks like they're originally going for an idea like Super Mario Bros. With the other levels. Well, and Crash Bandicoot. Why'd they censor that? Maybe it's a redacted thing, something with the with someone. It's the only thing that makes sense why they would censor it. it's so sensitive. How many pages is there? God. Jeez, how much more did they add to this? Oh God. More redacted stuff. Oh, Yoshi's Island. Oh, the competition. Super Mario 64. Oh, Rayman. Oh my. Alright, this done. Go developer test levels. Oh, that's cool that they added this. Sucks you can't actually play them though. Oh, it's one of these. Oh my god, I didn't even notice that there's a massive boulder coming down. Oh, is this the sliding one? Yeah, it is. Well, it's the one they talked about. Oh, that's really cool. Oh my god, what's happening with Croc's colors? Sucks they didn't add this into the remaster. Would've wanna at least try the sliding mechanics. Huh. What a great way to end the track. Oh, it doesn't hurt him. What's that arrow for? Okay, this is just random. My god, how many more test levels are there? Oh, this was removed. They were only rotating automatically in the final game. Okay, just 2 more developer levels. I forgot I could do that. Soundtrack. I'm not gonna play like all of them. I will play the full ones for the like the cut music or old versions, just so people can hear them. And they're very quiet. I don't know why they're so quiet. You can't even turn it up. Whoops. Oh, there's no Castle 2. Well, I mean Castle 1. Maybe Baron's Castle might be the Castle 1. Or maybe it's in the work in progress track list. enemies in this? Oh, not much. Oh, there is no castle one. It's weird. It looks like they're going for pretty long, so I'll just play part of it. We're probably people that uploaded all of these to YouTube by now anyway, so you can just watch the full tracks on there if you want to listen to them. It's like, this is like an hour and 23 minutes, so I need to get all this done. Oh, there's no cave 3. Oh, there's no desert 1 either. And maybe Ice 1 and 2 might be in the actual track. I think I remember seeing some Ice 1s. It's weird that these are louder than the actual tracks that were used in the game. Oh no, the remaster remixes. These are the people that remastered the sound, the music. Whoa. I don't know if these are copyrighted, so I really don't know. I don't know if YouTube allows these or what, but just listen to part of them. Oh, the Commodore 64. And last one. Huh. Okay, now backpack. Explore artifacts from the time of Croc's release. Oh, this is all the stuff that was made. Oh, that's cool. The Japanese version. The Epic of Croc. Oh, the TV show that they were going to make. That would have been amazing. I would love for them to come back to this and work on it. Work on the TV show again. Rufus the Doofus. I feel like he's flipping him off. There's a guidebook and a TV commercial. I love how Japan gets all those cool commercials. We never get them. Oh, I love the art. Like, Japan gets all the cool stuff. Their stuff is like way more detailed and everything than what we ever always get. Japanese commercial. Well, we'll see if they added subtitles. Oh, that sucks. But it was a good commercial. Marketing and merchandise. Marketing art. How's that thing? I don't know why that's on his backpack. Croc and King Rufus. King Rufus isn't there. Oh my god, he's a gobbo. On his backpack, that's embarrassing. I don't know, bloody, don't know how I forgot what they looked like. Greg Winter's art. ultimately unused, they are now in the possession of video game art collectors. And that's cool. Croc merchandise. Oh, I want one of those Letterman jackets. Only 40? Oh, that one's only in the UK, so that's probably even more rarer. Oh, another one for buying only. A couple of people got it with the PC version. Oh, only the Platinum Edition of the game. You don't know, Platinum was our version of the greatest hits. So yeah, it's probably a UK thing. Well, that's an interesting thing. I didn't know something like that existed. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that sucks. I would love the crystal though. Sucks that the wooden crates can't really be saved. They're really hard to save. Oh, I would love that crystal. Very few have survived. Oh, I would love to have been there. But that was the year I was born. Crocipedia. Gobbos Remaster first look, August 1997. The Sega Saturn poster. And no mention of the Sega Saturn. Oh yeah, there it is. Just a word. Game Informer magazine. I remembered them. You don't see game magazines anymore. What language is this? Oh, Italy. Italian magazine. Is that a gun? Alright, now Croc photo book. What's on his... Is that one of those suckers from... Was it like Alien or something? Jesus. Oh, Croc 2. Oh, a Croc cake. That is really cool. It's missing the tooth though, but that's fine. Other than that, it looks really cool. The Gold Award and Platinum Award. That, the guy at, Fox showed off. Why did they censor those? Why? That makes no sense. They weren't censored on his interview. It's weird. Oh, this is cool. I definitely would not know how to do this. Oh god, this is all confusing to me. Oh wow, nearly 2 hours. I'm gonna go a bit faster right now, so this save some time. Really didn't think it was gonna be... This part was gonna be nearly 2 hours. Let's see if we can find someone that can make this for me. This looks pretty cool. And that is, the Crocipedia is now done. I hope you enjoyed the game. Yeah, I still have no clue what the next game will be. It'd be either Destroy Humans 2 or Miles Morales, whatever one I decide to do. Yeah, yeah, I definitely think that they should remake either Croc 2 or Philosopher's Stone or Chamber of Secrets on the PS1, because all three of them were pretty good games. Other than the really bad jumping mechanic that is in this game, I really love this game. It's really cool. I enjoy it. I really enjoyed playing this. So yeah, I will see yeah, whatever the next game is. Alright, bye.